setting us up for our presenter, who is Reverend Jackie Hawkins, who I think most of us remember. Certainly, Susan and I do, since we went to school with her. And we are blessed with a presence as well as a person with some experience. She knows what she speaks of. And she's speaking today, Let's Make Revolutionary Love. She has graduated from the Unity Institute with a master's in 2013 of divinity. She was the senior minister at the Unity of Heartland in Olathe until 2019. And in June of 2019, she was elected to serve a 3-year term on the leadership and recruitment and development team of Unity Worldwide Ministries. So that's just a couple of things that she's been up to. So I'm hoping that everybody can relax and enjoy what Jackie has to share with us this morning. Jackie?
Thank you, Dennis. And I should have updated my bio because I continue to be reelected to the Leadership Recruitment and Development team. So I've been on that for quite a while. But I am so pleased to be with you, and let us begin with a meditation. And I invite you to close your eyes and bow your heads if that is comfortable for you. And let us take a few deep breaths together. And again. And as we settle into our meditation this morning, we focus on love and healing our world. Let us begin by affirming, I bring God's love into the world through my thoughts and actions of love. And silently repeat, I bring God's love into the world through my thoughts and actions of love. I live from the love that I am. I honor those who have been impacted by the natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, earthquakes, fires. Their lives are sacred. We know that love heals, and we release our healing energy of love so that it may do its noble work. We live from the love that we are. We send our love to war-torn situations throughout the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. We know that love heals, and we release this healing energy of love to heal the hearts and minds of those caught in the violence of war, both the perpetrators and the victims. We live from the love that we are. We enfold our country in healing love as we live through this election season. We light the flame of compassion, truth, understanding, and strength as we discern who are best equipped to serve our country at each level and in each department of government, at the local, state, and federal levels, in the judicial, legislative, and executive branches. Our hearts are open and our lives feel purposeful as we express our love to make this world a better place. And we now take this commitment to love and to heal into the silence. And as we bring our attention back into this sacred gathering, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. Well, I hope you enjoyed that beautiful music by Ricky Byers. I thought that it was the perfect song for our lesson today, for our theme today of trusting love and let's make revolutionary love. Thank you again for having me, and I'd like to begin by sharing a quote from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was all about love. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Love is the answer. And so I have been nudged by Spirit this morning to share with you a way of protecting ourselves and others in this war that we inadvertently find ourselves in. And I'm not referring to the wars in the Middle East or Europe or Africa. I'm referring to the war that we find ourselves in right here in the United States. This election season feels like a war at times. It looks like a war at times with the divisive words, the hateful speech. I don't know whether or not you have seen some of the ads that pop up on television and on our smartphones, but some of them are absolutely horrific. And so we need to shield ourselves, I find, from the negative energy, from the negativity that disturbs our peace. And what better way of doing that than getting in touch with the love that we are, the love that continuously resides within us. We're familiar with the teachings of Jesus, love your enemies. And certainly Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose work in civil rights and for social justice and his writings on the beloved community. But we are less familiar with the work of Valarie Kaur, K-A-U-R. She is an amazing, powerful activist, lawyer, spiritual warrior in the Sikh faith tradition. And so this morning, my intention is to share with you what she has termed revolutionary love. And we will go through the revolutionary love process quickly. This process of revolutionary love is grounded in the Sikh tradition, the Sikh faith. And the heart of that faith is love and oneness. Revolutionary love is a choice to labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves in order to transform the world around us. In her book, See No Stranger, Valarie shares her story of how she came to be a fierce warrior for justice using her strong background in the Sikh faith to ground her as she sought the answers to why there was and continues to be so much hatred in the world. Her story is powerful, as I said, and she tells it in a way that Mark Nepo says, and I quote, is immediate medicine for our troubled times. It will inspire your soul to repair the world by loving everything and everyone, end of quote. But rather than recounting her story or even summarizing it, I will focus on revolutionary love as a way of being in our world, a way of being. And we can use this process. We can live from this practice on a daily basis, especially now. And so there are three components in this revolutionary love process: love for others, our opponents, and ourselves. Kaur describes love for others as a practice of seeing no stranger. And she says the other can be anyone or anything outside of ourselves. So how do we begin to love others? She says, by wondering about them, by wondering about them. When you see someone on the street, wonder and say to yourself, in seeing them, you are a part of me I do not yet know. You are a part of me I do not yet know. And so by acknowledging that the other is a part of us, we begin to sense a connection. We begin to feel that love that is there, whether we have noticed it or not. By seeing the other as a brother or sister or father or beloved, then we are able to then truly begin to feel that connection. Kaur says, and I quote, who we see as one of us shapes what we do, whose stories we hear, the policies we support, the leaders we elect, and whose grief matters. Let me read that again. Who we see as one of us shapes what we do, whose stories we hear, truly hear, the policies we support, the leaders we elect, and whose grief matters. Because when we grieve with another, that is an act of love. Wondering about another, fighting for others are practices in the process of loving. Now, I'm not talking about a prescription. She's not giving a prescription here for loving others. It's an orientation to life. It's how we live, how we are being in the world. That's what she's talking about here. And that's what I'm suggesting that we can all do to shield and protect and love and be positive even when we are challenged by hate speech and divisiveness. I'd like to share an example with you. Kaur indicates that part of loving others is grieving with them. And loving others, it does not have to be a person, as those of you with pets understand. But I'd like to share with you an example of grieving with nature. A friend of mine, not too long ago, came to me on the phone. She lives quite a ways from me. She came to me in grief, and she began to share with me what she was grieving over and why she was grieving. And, in the middle of her explanation, I said, "You don't have to explain to me." And she said, "You probably think I'm crazy." I said, "I do not. I understand and totally get your deep connection to the environment, to the earth." And she was grieving over the destruction, the downing of a tree during a violent storm in her part of California. And she thought that tree, the tree was downed. She thought that tree was no longer going to live. So she went to that tree. She put her arms around the tree as far as her arms would go. And she leaned into that tree and she began to cry. And as she was sharing with me her grief, what she was feeling, I comforted her and understood that this truly is a situation where it was important for her to feel safe in grieving with another, and that her grief was supported. Grieving with others is part of loving. And it is also, this particular example also reminds us that it is so important that we love our environment. It is a part of us. And when our environment is harmed, we are affected. We are impacted. Kaur describes love for opponents as tending the wound, tending the wound. And an opponent is anyone whose beliefs, ideas, or actions oppose our own. She says, there are no monsters in the world, only human beings who are wounded. And to begin to love our opponents, we must first tend to our own wound. We must tend to our own wound. Because when we are in rage, we have to honor that rage that we're feeling. When an opponent is saying or doing something that enrages us, we have to honor that rage, not to lash out at the opponent, not to suppress the rage, but to honor it. Because there is a message. There is a message in our rage. And she is suggesting that we must first listen to what's going on. Listen to that wound that we're experiencing. Listen to the rage. And then as we listen, we're also able to then listen, pause and listen to the opponent and their wound. However, If you're in a situation where you're in danger, of course, you leave that situation. You don't pause and listen when you're being attacked. But one of the first mindful ways of loving the opponent is to listen so that we can begin to understand what's going on. I'd like to share a personal example with you. When I was growing up, a young girl in the 50s and 60s during the civil rights movement, and African Americans were enraged over the treatment that we were receiving. The leaders of that movement listened. They had to listen to their wounds. They had to listen to those in the white power structure in order to really begin to understand and begin to solve the problems of racism in America. And they began to involve those in the white power structure. They had to involve those in the white power structure, but it required a listening. I witnessed that as a young girl. And my role in that situation was really to be in the background. Everyone had a role in ensuring that that situation was going to be dealt with appropriately. And so that is a powerful example of how leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and my father were able to work with and love the opponent and begin to find ways to solve the problem of racism in America. A lot got done. Yet, of course, we continue to grapple with that issue, don't we? And in continuing to grapple with that issue, we must listen. We must listen to each other. We must listen to our opponent. We must listen to our own woundedness and see what's going on. Which brings me to that third component of revolutionary love, love for ourselves. Because we must love ourselves in order to sustain our love for others and for our opponents. So how do we begin to love ourselves? How do we do that? Well, Kaur describes it by using a metaphor of the midwife. She says, breathe and push. Breathe and push. Push through the pain. Push through the labor. But we must breathe. We must take care of ourselves as we are in this long labor of dealing with divisiveness and hate speech. And so as we breathe and assist ourselves in taking care of our bodies, we do things like walk in nature, meditate, listen to music, dance, all the things that help us to nurture ourselves, to nourish ourselves, to love ourselves. Because in this process in this revolutionary love process, there is a requirement. If we want to be in it for the long haul, there is a requirement that at various times we step back and pause so that we can continue to have the energy to move forward and to push those things that are important to us, those things that will help us to share our issues with our opponents and others. That is the process of revolutionary love. Love for ourselves, love our opponents, and love others. And so, as we are being called to meet the challenges of divisiveness, of power abuse, of hate speech, of climate change, of greed in our country, we can meet that challenge by using a process of revolutionary love. And so I invite you to join me in making revolutionary love as we breathe and push, moving through the challenges that we face during this election season. And in closing, I would like to again recite the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." Thank you. And let's make revolutionary love.